Welcome to Kanawha County Health Report from Kanawha-Charleston Health Department. I'm Dr. Sherri Young, the Health Officer and Executive Director for KCHD. On this episode, Health or High Water, How to Prepare for Emergencies and Disaster. Today, our guest is C.W. Sigman, Director and Fire Coordinator for the Kanawha County Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Welcome, C.W.
I'm glad to be here.
Tell me about your job and what's your role in responding to some emergencies around the area?
We kind of like to think of ourselves as not the stars, but the stage manager. We're here to support response agencies such as the health department, law enforcement, fire departments, Red Cross. We're here to kind of coordinate and help people play well together. And they do a real good job here in Kanawha County. It's pretty easy to do. And as a fire coordinator, we probably take a more hands-on role as far as assisting the fire departments on scene of a lot of fires. But mostly we're a coordination agency.
Disaster preparedness is something that's very near and dear to my heart and my family, as we had a house explosion a few months ago. I know that we were prepared for a fire, and I know that we were prepared for certain things. But me as a mom, how would you tell people to keep their families safe? What is your advice?
To keep their family safe, first of all, close the doors at night. Mm-hmm. Have your doors closed, eyes shut, doors shut. Keep your doors closed. If your house would catch on fire, heaven forbid, as you know, you've been through a catastrophe. But if the door's shut, it'll slow down the spread of the fire. And also have smoke alarms in the home. Very seldom do you see a multiple death in a fire that has smoke alarms. And usually if there is a fire with smoke alarms present, is a person was intimate with ignition. Maybe they set themselves on fire smoking or whatever. But smoke alarms and shutting the doors, two big components to keeping your family safe.
Okay, that's interesting that you mentioned shutting the doors. Can you explain why that's important?
Well, first of all, fire needs three things to survive. It needs heat, fuel, and oxygen. If you keep the door shut, you're shutting off the oxygen supply. You would be surprised how just shutting the door keeps the fire down and keeps the fire growth smaller. It keeps it from spreading. And even a cheap polycore door, doesn't have to be a very big substantial door, but even a cheap door will slow down the spread of the fire. And when I was in school, we were taught when the fire alarm sounded in the school, last person out, shut the door. And we also shut the windows. Back when I was going to school, didn't have air conditioning to start with, so we shut the windows also to keep the fire from spreading in case we had one.
Now, we should be checking our fire detectors in our house, correct?
You should check them once a month. Easy to test. Just get you a safe stool to stand on and reach up and hit the test button to make sure they work. The old cell detectors, alarms, need to have batteries put in at least in the fall. Usually we would tell people when you change your clock, change your batteries. Usually in the fall is a good time to do it when you change your clock because the weather gets a little cool, your house is a little cooler. And if you have a weak battery, you'll find that on that first cold night that's cool in your house, that battery will start chirping. So at least change them at least once a year. The ones we install, the Fire Marshal and the Red Cross all provide, are 10-year battery alarms. They still need checked at least once a month.
Do you have any advice on saving documents and a way to keep some very important, unique things for families safe during a crisis?
First of all, the most important thing, as you've lived through this, is protecting your family. Mm-hmm. Get your children out. That's number one. Never go back in after documents or anything like that. I don't even recommend going back in for pets. As near and dear they may be to you, might cost you your life. As far as documents go, you can get fire safes. It's usually relatively inexpensive, or a good file cabinet in a low part of the house. Hide it under the bed or whatever. But fire safes are not that expensive. It's a nice place to keep your documents. And you also might want to put them on a thumb drive, like scan them in, and keep them at a separate location, or keep them in your purse or whatever. And you escape, just take it with you. During a flooding in 16, a lot of the issues they had was people needed documentation that they owned the property, that they legally resided there. A lot of documentation they needed for insurance purposes was not available because of the catastrophic flooding. So having those documents on a thumb drive or in a safe location was real important for the recovery effort.
So talking about getting the family and evacuating, what do you recommend as far as a family plan for fire safety?
Again, smoke alarms, number one. You got to be alerted to it ahead of time. You need to know about it in advance. You need to have at least 2 ways out. It's nice to have a flashlight. The house catches on fire and there's power's out, there's no lighting in the building, it's heavy smoke. It's nice to have a flashlight beside the bed. And the children ought to practice at least a couple times a year crawling out of the house. It's different crawling than it is walking. So they need to be able to go blindfolded, be able to crawl out of the house. People don't realize how choking the smoke will be. They're used to seeing on TV. You got to have enough visibility where you can see the stars on TV. In a real fire, it may be have no visibility whatsoever. It may be choking, and it will be choking, and be very difficult to survive in it. So you need to keep low to the floor and out as fast as possible. Don't stop and get anything. Get out of the house.
One of the things we did with my family, we had fire drills, and so we had a common meeting place, and we knew where we would be in case the fire would happen, and be out of the way of the first responders and firefighters. And I think that was something that we had planned that I felt was helpful as well.
It saved your life. I was there in the aftermath, after the explosion, and your family getting out of the home, getting far enough away from the home to be safe. Otherwise, it'd have been catastrophic. So your plan worked as well as any plan I've ever saw.
Thank you.
So I'm tickled to death that it did.
Thank you. We're very, very, very fortunate to be here. And I have to say this, that we are very blessed to have no firefighters on scene when that happened. The way that everything happened, although tragic, nobody lost their life that night.
And as important as your house is and all your memorabilia and all the artifacts from your family, that you're still here to anguish over it is good. If we have a fire and everybody's out safe, put it in the wind column.
So earlier this summer, Kanawha County was hit by a tornado. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like for your department, and maybe talk about some other weather-related events?
To the folks that the tornado done damage to their home and their power was out for a couple days, it was a pretty catastrophic event. In the greater scheme of things, it was not a big event for the county. It was a big event for those who suffered the loss. We've had a whole lot bigger incidents in the county that affected more people, required more response. Tornado covered a relatively narrow area. Luckily, no loss of life, no serious injuries reported, and home damage was relatively light compared to other events. Compared to the derecho or the floods of 16, minor incident. The big thing about that is we knew it was coming to a degree. The Weather Service had told us about severe thunderstorms. They had said it's a non-zero chance of a tornado. We had that tornado possibility. We didn't have a tornado watch, but we did know a severe storm was coming. The warning systems worked well. The ones the National Weather Service puts out, the broadcast media was great. They interrupted everything they were doing and made sure they got the information out. Our alerting system, our sirens, all that worked well, and people, for the most part, had every opportunity to be warned. I know we didn't get everybody, but all the warning systems worked.
One other way we reach people in Kanawha County is using the KC Ready app. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a previous director had that developed under the direction of the county commission. It's an app. It's free. Go to the app or Google Play, App Store or Google Play. It's a free app. It has all kinds of cool stuff on there. But we can alert you almost like the wireless emergency alert systems the National Weather Service and the federal government uses, but we're not under the same restrictions. Think about it, if you have that app, wherever you are in the world and your cell phone works, you will get an alert. Dispatchers will set that off in the 911 center for tornadoes, significant events that may be life-threatening, an Amber Alert like a missing child that could be life-threatening. It's kind of our discretion what we use it for, where the wireless emergency alert is more focused in the area you're in. The app is wherever you're at. So if you're traveling to the beach and something going on in Kanawha County, you'll still get the alert and you'll know something's going on at home. And the dispatchers, again, have wide latitude. They don't have to call me and say, is it okay if we do this? If there's a life-threatening emergency, set it off, and they'll do that. And I would rather them set it off for a minor event than hesitate. During a tornado, county commission was ecstatic because everything worked so well. I mean, the county commission president was jumping for joy that it worked so well.
West Virginia, including Kanawha County, has seen a lot of destruction related to flash flooding in the past, and most recently the major flood we had in 2016. What are the most important things for people to remember in the midst of a flash flood or even a flood watch?
I think the biggest concern I have on flooding is the complacency we all have. We all want to drive through high water. I drove through this road a gazillion times, and I'm going to drive through it again. Most of the rescues we make, actual rescues, are people who are stuck in high water that they try to drive through. And for example, back in the spring, we had some high water. Cold River was at flood stage, and I was checking a road, and I stopped and would not drive through it. And I was just checking to see if the water was over the road. And a citizen came by, so it's okay, buddy, you can drive through that. So no, we preach, turn around, don't drown. I'm going to follow my own advice. So don't be complacent. Don't drive through high water, even if you know it's only a couple inches deep. Just don't do that. Also, not to be complacent when the National Weather Service says your stream's going to flood. Go to high ground if you're in an area prone to flooding. We do have some properties that are close to the streams and flood frequently. In the past, they used to holler, come get me out, come get me out, but they weren't in danger. So rescue teams will use some discretion. If you're not in danger, they won't come and get you. They're not going to take you out of a safe spot and put you in Class 5 whitewater. But be ready to be stuck where you're at for several hours. Be ready to have food and all that, and be ready to ride it out. And if you think your home may be inundated with water, go and evacuate now.
Okay.
Go and get out and be safe.
What kind of supplies would you recommend that people have ready in case of a disaster? So if you're settling in, the roads are cut off, you're safe within your home during a flood, what kind of supplies should people have and for how long?
Non-perishable food. If you go to my house, my wife is a prepper at our home. Even if we're traveling, she'll have a kit in the back of the car. If we get stuck somewhere, we got food and water and wipes, to clean your hands, and hand sanitizer, first aid kit, because my wife knows when I start working on anything to get the Band-Aids out, because I'm going to cut myself somewhere. But simple things that you may need, stuff that's non-perishable. Power may be out. And if you got medications you just have to have that, if you don't take them on a regular basis, you're going to suffer consequences of it. Have medication with you. Have it handy if you have to leave. Take it with you. Because when you get to wherever you're going to evacuate, it might not be a store open and you can get a new prescription. I recommend taking things that, if you got kids, that the kids are comfortable with. Don't take something, an unusual food that they won't eat normally. I got to take rations or whatever. Take non-perishable food that the kids used to eating all the time. Make it as comfortable and as normal as possible.
So what sort of things should businesses and homeowners be keeping in? You mentioned first aid kits. What kind of things should they have available along with Band-Aids?
Things have changed. We used to recommend Band-Aids and antibiotic creams and things like that, and stuff to stop more serious bleeding. In today's society, we're talking more about traumatic injuries, active shooters, bombing incidents. It's the way of the world. All of our folks are carrying trauma kits where we can do tourniquets. I think we need to carry trauma kits, those massive trauma bandages and tourniquets, and have your folks trained on how to do that, because if it does happen, just like we saw in some recent mass shootings, citizen responders who knew what to do saved a lot of lives. Because they were ready. Your business needs to have that ready just in case. Heaven forbid it ever happens. But don't just stand there wondering what happened. Be trained and have the equipment to go to work.
That's an excellent point. And so in the news today, we see a lot of mass shootings. So what would you tell people who want to be prepared as possible in this sort of situations, such as the fight or flight? What should they do if they're in this situation?
I think law enforcement teach a run, hide, fight. Don't sit there and wait for the shooter to come to you and just be sheep. Be the sheepdog, not the sheep. Be prepared to do what you have to do to defend yourself. Law enforcement here does a great job teaching folks on if there's a shooter in the building, get away from him. In some of the shootings we've had in schools in the United States and elsewhere, the teachers were all taught to take the children and gather them together like in a fire drill, like you talked about a place to meet, and thought that was the safest way to keep them protected. Now we're saying run. The shooter may hit somebody, but he won't have an easy target for lots of people. So law enforcement teaches run and get away from the shooter if at all possible. Hide, lock yourself in a secure area, and if you have nothing else to do, what do you have to lose? Fight. Businesses I recommend go to your local law enforcement agency and get training on what to do.
You're mentioning the trainings that have been going on, and one of the things that you've offered, even here in our health department, was the Stop the Bleeding training. It's something that has become very important in the day and age that we're living in right now. Can you tell us a little more about the Stop the Bleeding training and how it's being utilized?
It's a national initiative. Charleston Area Medical Center was kind of leading the charge on this, and they welcomed us into the program. Kanawha County Ambulance is really a big mover and shaker in it. One of our staff has taken the initiative, and he's teaching the class he just taught over here. We're teaching a lot of Stop the Bleed programs in a lot of areas. And again, the mass shootings recently, the surgeon comes out from the hospitals and says, hey, simple things that citizens did saved lives. If it ever happens here, I'm going to be able to say, yeah, we saved their lives because the citizens knew what to do. If people are trained and have basic skills, they won't panic. They usually react appropriately if they're trained to know what to do. There'll be heroes amongst us that'll take care of things before the first responders get there. And I'll say this, our local law enforcement, local responders are working very diligently to be prepared just in case. We pray it never happens here, but we just don't know. But we want to be prepared.
I want to change gears just a little bit to something that happened back when we had our major heat wave in South Charleston. There was a 2-month-old left in a car unattended in a hot car on one of the hottest days of the year, which was almost a tragedy. And thanks to a very good Samaritan, Ms. Foster, and thanks to we heard the 3-minute 911 call. First responders were there within 3 minutes to help Ms. Foster and the baby get to safety. Let's talk a little bit about why we shouldn't leave a child or an animal in a hot car.
We all know how hot it gets in a car, 120, 130 degrees inside a car. Very hot. Children can't regulate heat as well. To me, it's unexcusable to leave a child in the car. And just what can be more important in your life than your child? They say put something important in the back, you'll remember it. Now, if I don't remember my child's back here, heaven forbid. But children can't regulate their heat. They can't get out on their own. They can't cry out and open the door, roll down the window, whatever. What to do? First of all, call 911 and get that child out of the car. And I've been on children locked in the car. Used to have a really nice kit they used to break it in the car if I had to unlock a car. Saw how much distress the child was in. I broke the windows out. Deputy sheriff was there. Him and I, we broke the windows out, reached in and got the kid out of the car. The mother had got out to check a problem with the car and accidentally locked her up. Didn't mean to, didn't leave the child unattended. As soon as she did it, she called for help. But still, in that couple minutes it took us to respond, that child was in distress. So call 911. 911 folks will direct you. South Charleston Fire and police got there pretty quick, along with the ambulance authority, because the dispatchers got them out fast. But they can do emergency medical dispatching as far as giving you advice. Me, I'm going to break the windows.
Okay.
I'm not going to go looking for you. That kid's in distress. I'm going to break the windows, get the kid out.
And that's good advice as well. You're giving the example of a mother who accidentally locked the car and was unable to get in. And so in painting that picture too, it happens very quickly. These children and animals should not be left for even a moment. Anything else that you'd like to talk about? Any last thoughts?
A little piece of advice for those who do have generators. Make sure it's way away from your house and not on a combustible deck. Everybody has a deck or porch on their home that's made out of wood or whatever. Take that generator and get it off the porch, get it away from the house. The most common issue we have in a power outage is a fire started by a generator or carbon monoxide alarms.
And so that's another piece of safety that we should pass on, carbon monoxide detectors. Is that something you recommend for every home? And where should they be? And how should we utilize them with generators as well?
If you have natural gas or coal, wood, anything combustible to produce heat or anything in your home, you should have carbon monoxide alarms. They need to be close to the source of the carbon monoxide, say furnace, crack combustion chamber, etc., and should be at the farthest end of the system, the farthest away ductwork. It's nice to have them on every level of the home, but I think you have them in a couple locations, you're going to be in pretty good shape. and they're relatively inexpensive. You can even buy them at the big box stores and the hardware stores and places like that. It's a combination smoke alarm and carbon monoxide.
Thank you so much for keeping Kanawha County safe. I really appreciate you. Thanks for coming in and being part of our very first podcast and getting the information out. I'm very appreciative to have you here today. Tune into our next episode where we'll be talking additionally about fire prevention safety. Until next time, stay safe and stay healthy, Kanawha County.